Let's add some textures and materials to this object. We're going to start with our handle. So if we look at our reference image here, you notice that our handle is made out of wood. It's actually an oak wood. So what I did, I went to the internet and I downloaded a high quality oak wood texture. And so I want to be able to take this texture and place it on this 3D object. That is exactly what UV mapping is. It's the process of mapping a 2D texture onto a 3D object. And in order to do that accurately, you need to do something called UV unwrapping. Is where you mark seams along your object, specific places, so that it tells Blender exactly how to unwrap it so that the texture gets placed exactly where you want it. So for example, in our image here, you will see the wood grains going in this direction, but you don't want it to go in this direction. And that will depend on how it is you mark the seams and unwrap the object. If this concept seems a bit complicated, I'm going to simplify it in a way that you'll understand. I'm going to use just a default cube, and it's something that took me 4 years to see. But when you see it, it's hard to unsee it. And going forward, you'll be able to unwrap and mark seams on any object with much more confidence because you have a much better idea of what you're doing. So let me show you. So I'm just going to, let's move this down for now. I'm going to add a default cube, Shift A, Mesh Cube. And let's just move this out of the way. And let's zoom into it here. All right, so let me split the window. And this is our, in our UV editor. Let me just press X to remove this. All right, and this is our UV space here, our UV space. This is where we will put our text here so that we will see exactly what's going on. When you add a default cube or any of the primitives, it automatically creates a UV map for you. So if I press Tab to go into edit mode, you will see this UV map of this cube. Pay attention to this T. We'll come back to that later. So this is a nice pretty T. And if it is that I remove this UV map by pressing the minus button here, it's gone. And if I have to unwrap this again, I press U and unwrap. You notice that we don't get our T. It says unwrap failed to solve one island. It seems may need to be added. So then how do we get back our nice pretty looking T? Well, this is where you have to mark seams to tell Blender exactly how to cut or to unwrap this so that it shows up just like how you want it over here. All right, so let me show you. If I remove it again, I could now add seams. So to add seams to an object, and in edge select, I could select this edge and Control E, mark seam. Or I could select another edge and just press UM to mark the seam. And so I could do that going along here. I could select these edges and then hold Shift and continue selecting edges. I'll press Alt Z to select that other side. Hold Shift and select those other edges. And then press Control E, mark seam. Alt A to deselect everything. Now if I press A and U and unwrap, I could tell you exactly what is going to happen. I'm going to get an upside down T. So I'm going to click unwrap. And an upside down T. How did I know I was going to get an upside down T? Well, I'm going to show you, but I will show you something else now. If it is I click on this edge, for example, Control E and clear the seam, and let's say I placed another seam up here instead, Control E, mark seam, then what is going to happen? A, U, unwrap, I get this capital T, and I could make it where it's right side up. So I could remove this edge, Control E, remove the seam from this edge, and Control E, mark the seam across here, A, U, unwrap, and it's right side up. How do I know what I'm going to get here? How do I know where to place the seam? But this is what I say it took me 4 years to understand. Let me show you exactly what is happening here. So let me remove this for now. All right, we will unwrap it afterwards again. So over here, this is our UV editor. All right, don't mix it up with the image editor. It could look the same. Make sure we're in our UV editor. And this is called the U. The horizontal is the U and the vertical is the V. It is just so that we wouldn't confuse the X and the Y in our 3D space. So there's X, Y, Z because there's 3D, 3 dimensions, and in 2 dimensions there's U and V. So the U is the horizontal and the V is the vertical. it's as if the U represents the X and the Y represents the V. You follow me so far? All right. So if this, we could say, so to speak, represents the X and this is the V represents the Y, in our 3D viewport, we could have something looking similar to this. If we press 7 on our numpad, we look at it from the top and check our gizmo here. You see the X goes this way and the Y is this way. So it's as if we're looking at it pretty much the same as we're looking at it from here, from top down. All right. So to see what is happening, let me press A and let's U and UV unwrap it once more. I'm going to, with sync selection on, let's enable face select and let me deselect, Alt A to deselect. And I'm going to press the number 8, numpad 8, just so that we could rotate it a little bit so we could see behind there. So this face behind here is actually this face to the top here. Because now keep in mind, we're looking at it pretty much the same. All right. This is like the X and this is like the Y, the UV, right? So we're looking at it like this here. So if I select this face here, I know that this is this face here. As we come down, this obviously would be this one. And behind this obviously will be this one. And then underneath will be this one. You follow me so far? Now let me switch to edge mode and you will see. You'll follow exactly more what's going on. So I switch to edge mode. If I press Alt A, if I select this edge here, you'll notice, well, of course, two vertices make up an edge, right? So this edge, this lights up here, but it also lights up this here. What is happening? Well, it's pretty simple. Remember, let me turn it around so you'll see. This edge is connected to this face, which is what is lighting up here. But this edge is also connected to this face, which is what is represented down here. And so that is why you're seeing these two edges lining up. And what about these vertices? Well, if I go press 1 vertex, you notice again, these two vertices represent these two here, but they also share the face of these two. And that is why these line up. And what about this one? Well, it's pretty simple. This vertex is part of this face, which is this one. And the one on this side is part of this face. So far, so good. Let me press 7 for top view once again. And now you could follow. How did I know exactly where or how my UV map will end up? It's because I could follow what is going on here. Anytime you see the outskirts of your UV map, that is where the seams are. So I'll say it again. Wherever there's the outskirts of your UV map is where the seams are. So you could tell. So isn't there a seam here? There's a seam to the top here. Because we're looking at it from the same view, right? And it continues down here. This is a seam here. And then on this side, this is a seam here. But let me follow it. Let me show you so you could follow. Where there's no seam, that's where it's on the inside. So it's not the edge. Remember, the edges is where the seams are. So this is the face here, and notice it's flowing this way. So there's no seam, so it's flowing this way. No seam. This is not the outside. It's flowing this way, and then it's flowing this way to the right here. See it? No seam is here, and then it reaches an edge. Bap, bap. This is where a seam is. All right, and to the left of that, bap, bap, that's where the seam is. Forgive my poor sound effects. All right, but let's come down the cube a little bit more. There's no seam here, no seam here. That's why it's continuing to flow. All right. Again, there's no seam here, so it continues to flow until it reaches the end here. Pop up. There's a seam here, and that is how you could tell exactly how it will unwrap. And so what I did earlier, remember I said this was the cross, and I could tell you how it is. I could get it as a capital T. It's very easy. So if it is that this is what you see, this face here, and there's no seam here, and it flows across here and flows across here, left and right, that's how you get your T. In order to get a capital T, here's what you do. You remove this edge, these seams from here. So I press Ctrl E and clear seam, Alt A to deselect. Now I want this to go straight across the top. So instead of putting the seams here, I'll put a seam up here and put another seam here. Control E, mark seam. So you could see what's going to happen now. So you notice it's going to flow to the top. The top is going to flow here and then come down, flowing all the way, no seam, no seam, no seam, and stop here. So if I press A to select everything and press U, unwrap, you get a capital T. All right. As I said, once you see it, it's hard to unsee it. So remember, because we are looking at it from the top down, just like here, and I just press A to rotate it so you'll see behind, so you see what's happening. You can see that it's going all the way across, just like this here. There's no seam. So it's going all the way across until it hits this seam. Pap, pap. That's what's happening here. If you go on the other side, no seam. There's no seam here. And it hits the seam. Pap, pap. And that's how you could tell. So you could see exactly what is happening. What I would highly suggest is that you practice this on your own and place the seams and try to get back that T, the common T and the capital T. And by doing that, you'll get a solid understanding of exactly what is happening, so you'll know where to place your seams. So any object going forward, you could more easily unwrap it so that you could get your desired result. All right. What you just listened to for the past 10 minutes or so is a sample from my recent course entitled Product Advertising in Blender Full Workflow. At the time of recording, the chapters about file management, workspace customization, and the entire workflow for modeling the speaker are there available for download right now. As you could see, as you saw before, the entire speaker is already modeled. Also, we have already UV unwrapped it and textured it. And the other chapters with lighting and color management and so will be added in the next 2 weeks. This really, as you will see, is about workflow for anyone who's really serious about product advertising in Blender. And so you will know exactly what to do from A to Z, and any project that comes your way, you'll be able to tackle it head on and be properly organized. And throughout, I could say it's pretty comprehensive. So there are a lot of unique techniques that you will learn in doing this course. So I highly recommend this course for anyone who's serious about product advertising in Blender. Right now, you could get it at 25% off using the discount code workflow. All right, so if you're interested, you could check out the link in the description and it takes you to my Gumroad page. All right, so happy blending and see you next time.